Chassis systems. They're quite the rage now, with rather large companies such as Sig Sauer releasing their own chassis system, in that of the Sig P320, all the way to companies such as Springfield Armory and their new Echelon series. But this begs the question, has anyone tried to make a chassis system for a gun that doesn't suck? Today I'm happy to report to you, yes. Sorta. Introducing the G0, a new chassis system for the Gen 3 Glock 19, but with a twist. And to better understand that twist, I'm going to have a nice little card and a link in the description below to a TFB TV video, because for some weird reason, every other video that talks about this gets taken down. Your guess is as good as mine. But no matter, this is a gaming channel first and foremost. And the game we'll be playing today is none other than YouTube's TOS itself. And the way we'll know if we won is if this video still remains up. So buckle up everyone, but not before I introduce the new channel sponsor, the greatest online patch merchant around, Aho Patchworks. And I'm not just saying that because they pay me to, but it does help that they are. Do you like Baltimore? Why not get a patch to show it? How about the Antichrist? Why not get a patch to show it? Aho Patchworks has a patch for everyone. And for everyone subscribed to this channel, you can use my coupon code too. Use coupon code AGCAST for 10% off every order. Talk about a great deal. Link in the description below, and be sure to tell Aho I said hi. And after that, here comes the smooth transition back to the video itself. So welcome back gamers, and today we'll be taking a look at the G0 by Defense Distributed. Now because, again, YouTube's policies sort of limit my ability to talk about it, I strongly recommend watching the G0 video by TFB TV, because honestly, this video is not going to be a review. You see, there were some bold claims in that TFB TV video, and the video really didn't have much shooting in it. Being the opportunist that I am, I saw an opportunity. 1,000 rounds on a DIY rail locking block chassis thingy, it's quite impressive really. So I decided to reach out to someone from Defense Distributed to see if I could join in one of their range days, where they were testing the G0, and they agreed. Now, full disclosure, this was not paid or sponsored by Defense Distributed. I was the one that reached out to them on my own curiosity. I was provided 1,700 rounds to help with some of the testing. I was accompanied by another member of Defense Distributed and was allowed to film the whole thing. Granted, it was a smaller indoor range and it was quite hard to get good footage. The only thing I was told to do was just be honest, and to wait about 2 weeks before posting this. So, here we are. Let's get the obvious question out of the way. Does it actually work? Yeah, out of our 1,700 rounds, there were about 3 stoppages. Allow me to explain. For the first few hundred rounds, I was using Defense Distributed's dagger slide, but then I decided I wanted to swap to my own dagger slide. There was really no reason in particular, I just liked my slide better. To make a long story short, once I swapped my slide over, I began to experience some failure to feed issues, but that was with non-OEM Glock mags. This is what it looked like. Really, all that needed to be done was just adding lube to the slide, and once that happened, it ran fine. I don't really blame that much on the frame considering it worked fine with Glock mags, but it was a malfunction nonetheless. Oh, there was also this weird malformed blazer bullet. It wouldn't extract, but I don't blame it. Sadly, you're gonna have to just take my word on that one. Every camera I had had basically died at that point. Now look, if we had a switch and a bunch of drum mags, this would be a way more entertaining video. But we don't. So we took the slow and steady route instead. With 5 Glock 19 mags and 1 .32 rounder, this took hours. I don't think I've ever been bored shooting before till this day. But at least now I can say, the G0 ran near flawlessly. For better or worse, it felt just like a Glock. But what about the rails themselves? Well, a lot has changed since the original video with TFB TV. While the chassis in that video was made out of aluminum, aluminum is not recommended for building a G0. 4140 steel and 303 stainless steel are the only 2 supported metals currently for the G0. The one that I shot was made out of 4140. Now this is how the chassis looked like before it was shot. There are some clear machining artifacts, but what I found sort of interesting was this weird, strange chip near the locking block area. I was told that that chip is sort of expected with the G0. It happens around the original first couple shots through it and doesn't grow much beyond that. If anything, it's sort of like a breaking in process. And to my surprise, yeah, it didn't get worse. I could pretty much just end the video here and call it a day. The G0 chassis made in 4140 steel works exactly as intended. But what about the aluminum chassis and the stainless steel? Well, the aluminum one seemed to be more for testing. I was able to see some of the original aluminum prototypes, and some of them had some rather high round counts, but the aluminum chassis system was fundamentally flawed. Eventually, the locking block would break and then make it worthless. While it would have been fun to test the aluminum version, it was never meant to be, it seems. When it comes to the stainless steel one, however, the issue arose of, while you could machine it out of stainless steel, if you can machine it out of 4140 though, you should just machine it out of 4140 instead. And look, this is all really just one massive longabout way of saying, yeah, the G0 works. So now comes the more important question. How does it compare to everything else? Well, it's a Gen 3 Glock 19, meaning it takes the same parts kits as a Gen 3 Glock 19. You can also upgrade it like any other Gen 3 Glock 19. Now personally, I'm not the biggest Glock fan. I never really liked the triggers, but I accepted they had pretty good reliability. So when I tell you that every SIG P320 trigger I fired felt no better than every Glock I fired, it's not cope, it's an insult. But if you were to compare the chassis system of the G0 to that of the SIG P320, I'd prefer the G0. Not because the G0 is magically better. On the contrary, really, I just prefer a normal Glock 19 frame. The fact that it's inside a chassis is really irrelevant to me. Issues such as bending your extractor due to over-inserting a mag, often found in SIG P320s, will not happen with the G0. And even if it did, you can still just replace that extractor because it's not part of the firearm. And before you type out, "Well, hasn't happened to me," or call me a Glock fanboy, please make your comment as long-winded and aggressively worded as possible, as I find those to be the funniest to read. Now, comparing the G0 to the DIY Glock scene, this is where things get a little more complicated. The module system sort of makes it kind of unique. And again, I'm going to recommend that TFB TV video because they go in depth a little bit more about it. And YouTube still hasn't taken it down. But the module I was using was 3D printed using SLS. And according to the DD team, this module had several different chassis swapped through it, causing it to accrue well over a 7,000 round count. And to be completely honest, I was quite impressed. An entire day of mag dumping and no deformation. I don't really think there's any filament that can handle that much heat and stress, while also being able to be printed on a consumer-grade printer. But this is also where the problem sort of lies. SLS printing is fantastic. It feels strangely soft but extremely rigid. While better than anything you'll probably be able to print on an Ender 3, it's still not injection mold quality. While the module I used had no signs of cracks or deformation, the rear pin would slightly walk when fired.
Roll pin walk.
While a test frame might not be the perfect example for a common use case, it's still something that happened. But while 7,000 rounds is pretty impressive on a 3D printed frame, that level of longevity is expected on a Polymer 80. And this sort of leads to my final point about the G0. The G0 works, but of course it should. The real question is it worth it to buy a ghost gunner to build a G0? Again, I'm going to recommend that TFB TV video. There they talk more about the ghost gunner, and since I already have one strike, I'm just not going to take that chance. And before this video turns into a review about the Ghost Gunner, I think I'm going to end it here. I'd like to say thank you to Defense Distributed for allowing me to test their G0, as well as provide the ammunition. But more importantly, I want to thank you, the viewer. Because after all, who would be crazy enough to sit through 8 minutes of rambling with the worst CSGO surf footage imaginable? Who else but you? And for that, I appreciate every single one of you. Till next time.